everyone, welcome back to the channel and thank you for tuning in. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Layla, the Lenormand reader, and today folks we are doing another Tarot-To-Lenormand video. So recently I've done a Lenormand video about the Lenormand pips, so I'm going to link that in case you didn't watch it. And I did mention in that video that there is a rough correspondence to the tarot pips which are corresponding to the suits. And I say there's a rough one because Lenormand has its quirks. It is not like what we are accustomed to see with the pips and the suits. Today I want to focus on the Ace of Cups and the Ace of Wands. And what I want to do specifically is to see what would correspond to the meaning of each of the cards in the Cup suit, and similarly what would correspond in Lenormand to each of the cards in the Wand suit. Now, from the get-go, I want to tell you that this is not going to be a pip correspondence. This is not going to be the suit of cups matching the suit of hearts and the suit of wands matching the suit of clubs. For starters, in Lenormand, it is the suit of clubs that is challenging. So that is unlike the tarot, where normally the challenging suit is the suit of swords. So just to go over it, we've got the cross, the mouse, the mountain, the fox, the bear, the whip is in here, the snake is in here, and the cloud. So you can see most of the cards in the club suit in Lenormand are actually challenging cards. And the clubs is what would correspond to the wands, but the wands are not mainly challenging in the tarot. So there is not going to be a suit or a pip correspondence. That's not what we're after. I've got them separated just so that it's handy and in case we need to make the occasional comparison. But what we're doing here is looking at the meaning of the cards. So let's start with the suit of cups. I'm just going to put this aside for a bit. The suit of cups in the tarot is a beautiful suit of usually love and feelings, and there's lots of emotion and happiness. There are the down cards as well, so it's not just happiness, but it can be sadness. But in general, it is a suit of joy. And it is focused on the idea of emotions and fulfillment. A sense of fulfillment comes through the suit of cups. So let's examine the suit of cups and see what would be the cards in Lenormand that match these. The reason I'm doing this is because it's come across as a request. You know, how do you sort of translate the tarot cards into Lenormand? So the first card is the Ace of Cups. Clearly, this is one of the most beautiful cards of the tarot deck. And I really feel that the best card in the Lenormand deck that matches the Ace of Cups is actually the Sun. I feel that it comes from this little sun here. This cross coin here is the idea of receiving. This may come from a Christian archetype where it is the cup that receives the blessing that is represented by the bird and cross. But I think it's really easy to broaden this into the idea of being open to enlightenment, you know, being that vessel that receives the blessing, that receives the light, and that receives the insight. And so I feel that the Sun is a really powerful card that matches this meaning. On top of that, it is an ace. It is not the Ace of Hearts. It is the Ace of Diamonds that I feel best matches the Ace of Cups in the tarot. The Ace of Hearts in the Lenormand is the Man. And this is a very neutral card. I don't think it matches the meaning of the tarot Ace of Cups at all. So I don't think this is the best matched card. I really think that the Sun is the most beautiful card to represent the Ace of Cups. And of course, you may come up with different cards that match the meaning of the Ace of Cups. Let's move on to the Two of Cups. The Two of Cups is a beautiful card of romance, of connection, and it is not, I feel, a binding relationship just yet. It is actually just number 2 in the tarot, and if you practice tarot, you might know that there is a pretty orderly unfolding from the 1 to the 10 into the court cards. And so the earlier numbers tend to be the less evolved essence of the suit, but still, these are beautiful indications of connection, of chemistry, and possibly romance. I feel that the card that best matches this is the Heart. The Heart itself is the Jack of Hearts in Lenormand, and I feel that the Jack of Hearts or the Heart card is really well suited to represent the Two of Cups. And it is also the same suit as well. So I feel this is a good match. You may have, of course, other suggestions. You might think of the ring, but again, I feel the ring is a bit too binding for the stage of where number 2 of cups is at in the tarot, but it still might be a really good card for it. And of course, there is the context and the question, and all of that can come into play. Let's move on to the 3 of cups. The 3 of Cups is a card of celebration and festivity. It is very clear from the illustration. This is, of course, the Rider-Waite in the tarot. And we have 3 women who are dancing with their 3 cups. A beautiful card. And I feel that the best matched card from the Lenormand deck is actually the Queen of Spades. The Queen of Spades is the flowers card, and the flowers is all about celebration and happiness and renewal. It is associated with spring, and it is the card that is best associated with the idea of celebration in the Lenormand deck. Notice, of course, that it's the Queen of Spades. It is not the heart suit that corresponds to the cups, and we're going to find these differences because Lenormand has its quirks. Let's move on to the 4 of Cups. The 4 of Cups is not the most joyous card in the suit of cups. It has to do with feeling blah, feeling a little bit empty, feeling a gap. It can also point to the idea of being a little bit hopeless, like having tried and not really going anywhere. So it does have a sense of a little bit of a down energy. And of course, a lot of readers will look at this cup here and the hand coming with a cup towards the person sitting down and feeling a little bit down. It is like a gift that is coming through this situation. But of course, the main energy of the card is about feeling down, feeling like there is a bit of a downtime, a bit of hopelessness, having tried and given up a little bit. All of these energies comes through the 4 of Cups. There is also this idea of moving away and taking time out. So which card from the Lenormand deck do I feel best matches the 4 of Cups? Well, I feel that the Coffin would do a good job representing it. The Coffin is actually in the Diamonds suit, and it is represented by the 9 of Diamonds. So I feel that this is a good card to represent the idea of moving away, feeling a bit down. There is also that sense of not much happening. So I think this is a good match for it. And I feel that it's also possible that the Clouds might represent it well. The Clouds is the King of Clubs. And it would be interesting to have both together to represent the 4 of Cups. Of course, there are only 36 cards in the Lenormand deck, but in the tarot, we have so many more. We have 78 cards. So it does also work to use card combinations to translate the tarot cards into Lenormand. So I feel these 2 cards are a good match for the 4 of Cups. I feel that the Coffin is perhaps better than the Clouds because the Clouds can be a bit, it can create tension. It is not as still as the Coffin, and I feel the 4 of Cups is a pretty still card. Moving on to the 5 of Cups. So the 5 of Cups is obviously a disappointment. It has to do with sadness. And this is where I feel the Coffin and the Clouds together work a bit better. But also there can be more challenging cards that come through. So we have 3 cups that are fallen, 2 cups that stand, which usually represents the idea of hope. A lot of tarot readers will pay attention to these 2 and suggest that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that there is goodness on the other side of this, but still the essence of the 5 of Cups is really sadness, disappointment, and loss of sorts. So here, a number of Lenormand cards are applicable. Like we said, the Clouds and Coffin is one possible combination. Either one on its own is also possible. I feel that if the disappointment is a bit more difficult, either the Whip or the Snake can come into play. The Snake is really more about like a nasty bite, or someone who had been mean. The Whip is a bit more of a challenge or a conflict that can come through, and so either of these can work out. Another one, another good combination is the Heart and Whip, or possibly the Heart and Scythe in the Lenormand. And here it would represent the idea of a heartbreak, the sense of, the difficult feelings are well captured when we have the heart with any of those challenging cards. It can be with the coffin, for example. It can be with the scythe, like we said, and it can also be with the clouds, for example, you know, the idea of just, you know, not feeling it and having some hard feelings. But I think a more aggressive card like the whip, or a more telling card like the coffin, suggests better this notion of disappointment that is represented by the Five of Cups. Moving to the Six of Cups, this is a beautiful card of renewal, and it has to do with this idea of returning. It is also about giving and generosity. So I really feel that the flowers, again, is really good. I think it is the closest aligned with the Six of Cups. But any number of positive cards from the Lenormand deck can be represented with the Six of Cups. There is also the allusion to a child in this card, and a lot of tarot readers will point out the idea of a child in here. If that's the case, then the child card in the Lenormand deck can also work out well to represent the Six of Cups. So it's a beautiful card. I think it's a bit general in the sense that it has to do with the sense of renewal and giving back. And again, I feel that it's the flowers that best matches that when we try to make the card a bit more specific. Moving on to the Seven of Cups. This is a card of possibilities. It is also a card of confusion. And so I feel that the best match for the Seven of Cups is definitely a clouds. So the King of Clubs, which is the clouds in the Lenormand deck, along with option cards, choices cards. So for that, we have a number of them. We have the Cross, which can point to a tough decision. That can be a possibility, the Cross and the clouds, the idea of having to make a decision, having to think through what we need to do, our priorities. And I would also say that the Road is a possibility as well. The Road is in the diamonds, I believe. It is the Queen of Diamonds. So when we have the clouds and the Road, we have this idea of options and possibilities, because the Road is often associated with multiplicity. Now, the mouse is sometimes taken to represent multiplicity. A number of Lenormand readers will take the mouse to represent, it's often the mice, in fact, to represent the idea of several options or several things going on. That might resonate with you. Personally, it doesn't really resonate with me this way. I feel that the mice are more about the idea of loss and drain and the idea of something being eaten away at. And so I don't think this is the best match for the Seven of Cups. But you might have a different approach, and certainly let me know in the comments. So that's my take on the Seven of Cups. Now the Eight of Cups, it's another difficult card in the suit of cups in the tarot, and it clearly represents someone who is leaving and turning away, and it often is about disappointments, letting go of something that didn't work out. You can also notice the moon in here that looks a bit sad. It is not really joyous, and you know, the overall energy of the card, I think it's a really good illustration for simplicity. You really feel from the card that it is a sense of disappointment. So the Eight of Cups is about disappointment, and I feel that the best card for this from Lenormand is the Snake. So the Snake is the Queen of Clubs, and I would also pair that with the Roads. The idea of turning away following a disappointment. There is also the slowness that I feel is captured by the Eight of Cups that is also captured by the Snake and Road. So the Snake doesn't rush, although it is typically associated with shorter periods of time, it is still not a rushed card. When we see the Snake and Road, it has to do with the idea of moving away, turning away, probably in the face of a disappointment or as a result of a disappointment. That, I feel, is the best combination that captures the Eight of Cups. The Nine of Cups, and I would say the Ten of Cups. These are two wish fulfillment cards. They are very, very bright and positive. Clearly, any of the positive cards in the Lenormand deck would match well with either of these. So the Sun, which is the Ace of Diamonds, would be a good one. The Flowers is another good one. The Clover, the Child is a good one. This idea of brightness, the Clover is the Six of Diamonds. We also have the Star. Any of the wish fulfillment cards in the Lenormand deck would work really well with either the Nine of Cups or the Ten of Cups. I would say that the Ten of Cups tends to add the sense of family, and so it's possible that the house comes into play. The house is the king of hearts, and so maybe this represents to some extent the Ten of Cups, but I would say not on its own. On its own, I think it best represents the King of Cups because it is also the King of Hearts. So this is one card or another card where the suits are well matched between the Tarot and Lenormand. And in the Tarot, the King of Cups tends to be a family man, really connected with his close relationships. And I think this works really well with the King of Hearts being the house. In fact, in Lenormand, the house often represents the father. And so I think this works really well with the King of Cups. But when it comes to the Ten of Cups, I think the house might do well with another lovely card like the Clover, for example, like a happy home, happy family life, or something like the Flowers, lots of joy and festivity, the kids playing in this card. That is a lovely one. And also maybe the Child, the fact that it's a house with children and joy when the child is not necessarily representing children, and maybe the Heart and House together. So there are a number of cards, positive and joyous cards, that we can pair with the house to represent the Ten of Cups. At least that's how I would see it. Now, the Page of Cups. So the Page of Cups would be closest to the Jack, I believe. Some people would say it would be closest to the Knight. It is the Knight that would be closest to the Jack in Lenormand. It depends how you want to see them. And like I said in the pip video, we do not have Knights and we do not have all the numbers. So let's stick with the Jack, the Page of Cups first. Well, very obviously it would be the Heart. So the Heart is a Jack, and it is the Jack of Hearts. So this is another card between the Tarot and Lenormand that are well matched, where we can use the Jack of Hearts to represent a person. And it is that open heart, wanting to connect, being maybe vulnerable in these ways and just really connected with feelings. So I think this works well. And I think it would work well also with the Knight of Cups. So the Knight of Cups can also be represented by the Jack of Hearts here, which is also the Heart in the Lenormand deck. But another card that would work well with the Knight of Cups is the Rider. And the Rider is, I believe, in the Heart suit. Here it is. It is card number 1, but it is the Nine of Hearts. And actually, when we have the two together, I think it would work really well to represent the Knight of Cups. In fact, it would be helpful to translate Tarot-To-Lenormand to use the Rider to represent any of the Knights, but then paired with another card to represent the essence of the suit. So in this case, we have the Knight of Cups, and it is about love and romance and the emotions. So we would pair the Rider with the Heart. And I think this is a really good match for the Knight of Cups. And then finally, we have the Queen of Cups. The Queen of Cups is a beautiful card of a woman who is receptive, kind, and gentle, and all of the beautiful affirmations that we associate with the cups. And I feel that the Stork, which is the Queen of Cups, I believe, might match as well. The thing about the Stork is that it is a movement card, and from looking at the Queen of Cups, I really don't feel that sense of movement. I feel she's much calmer and much more still than what we would associate with the Stork. But the Stork is associated with children, and the Cups suit in general is really focused on, the connection with others, relationships, love, and the family. And so it might not be far off from associating the Queen of Hearts from the Stork. I personally, I would bypass the motion and movement that is associated with the Stork, and I would say that the pip in this case, and you know, some aspects of the stork, meaning the children aspect, works well to represent the Queen of Cups. So I would be satisfied with using the stork to translate the Queen of Cups into Lenormand. So this is my take on the suit of cups. I'm happy to move on to the suit of wands now. And of course, I look forward to your comments about all of my suggestions. If you have other suggestions that are helpful to myself and others, I'd love to hear them. So the suit of wands in the tarot, this is a powerful suit, lots of action and activity across the different phases. It is very much associated with work and career. So it is the theme that is mainly associated with the wands in the tarot. And it is a fire suit, so it tends to be very energetic, and it takes on a different energy than the cups. The cups is much calmer, much more centered around heart and soul. The wands is really about action and that sense of self-direction and you know, having ambition and being proactive. So keeping this in mind, let's go through the suit of wands and see how we would represent them with Lenormand. So the Ace of Wands is really about, it is not so much about receiving like the Ace of Cups, but it is really about doing. It is a powerful card of action, of sowing seeds. And I feel that a good card for the Ace of Wands is in fact the Rider. You know, it is number one in terms of not the pips, but in terms of the first card of the deck. And I feel that it is about, you know, taking that step forward. It does have that ambition, that sense of fieriness, and the movement that I feel is associated with the Ace of Wands. Another possibility would be the Child. And actually, the Child might work well for any of the aces in the tarot deck, except maybe the Ace of Swords when we get to the swords in the next video. That is another possibility. I feel these are the best cards associated with the Ace of Wands. Is there another possibility? We suggested that the Sun would be associated with the Ace of Cups, and actually I don't see why it wouldn't be associated with the Ace of Wands. I feel that the Ace of Wands is more about beginnings and setting, setting into a new path. So it is, you know, the idea of taking that first step. Whereas the Sun, I feel, is more about achievement or enlightenment. So I feel that it is not the most ideal association for the Ace of Wands. But what could work is a combination of, let's say, the Rider and Sun is lovely for the Ace of Wands. You know, this idea of moving forward with ambitions and into this new beginning that is so promising. I think this can work. And of course, there are any number of other combinations that can work as well. A powerful card. The Two of Wands. This is an interesting card. It is typically associated with planning, envisioning what the goal looks like, and it is still in the mind phase, you know, so it comes after the one where we sow the seed, and then the two is about forming the plan and really creating the vision. So I think it is very much a mental and psychological card in the tarot. And so I think that we would have to bring in the clouds in here, but the clouds being a typically challenging card, it's important to adjust it with another positive card to reflect the Two of Wands. And for this, I suggest the key. So let me find the key. Is it a diamond? Yeah, it is a diamond card. I think the key and the clouds would work well. You know, the idea of thinking up solutions, being resourceful, planning, I think very much comes through these two cards. And the key is a really positive card, so it would overcome the challenges of the clouds. And I think in that case, it would work well to represent the Two of Wands. Of course, you may have other suggestions. Moving on to the Three of Wands. So at the point of the Three of Wands, the 3 is a creative number. It goes beyond the thinking and planning phase, and this is where we set sail. And so I really think that the ship works well. And there are a few ships. We have 3 ships here in the Rider-Waite. And even though they're tiny, believe it or not, a lot of tarot readers pay serious attention to these ships, because it has to do with the idea of setting sail and moving forward. And it's really across, I would say, most mythologies and most, how do I say, archetypal environments or archetypal ecospheres, if you like, that the ship is really associated with the idea of setting sail and going for an adventure and doing well in business and, you know, seeking to broaden our horizons in this way. So I think that the ship in Lenormand would work really well to represent that. And the ship is in the spade suit. The ship by itself is really bright and positive in Lenormand. It has to do not just with travel and that sense of adventure, but it's really good with money and finances. It tends to be associated with returns on investments, positive returns on investments, and, you know, doing well. It's also associated with trade, buying, selling, import, export, and all of that exciting activity that classically happens at ports. So I think that it works well to represent the Three of Wands and that sense of setting out on this adventure. Now moving on to the Four of Wands. The Four of Wands is, I feel, very much like the Three of Cups in the Cup suit. This has to do with achievement and success and fulfillment. So again, I feel that the flowers works really well to represent the Four of Wands. There's that sense of festivity. I think the Sun might also do well. The idea of success and achievement that is represented by the Four of Cups, the Four of Wands. And there are any number of combinations that can work out. For example, maybe we can stick the clover in here, but the clover is really about luck, and it's not so much about, you know, achievement. But it's possible that, for example, the rider and clover, the road and clover, the idea of achieving is represented by associates well with the Four of Wands. I still think that something like the Sun or the flowers is better suited. Moving on to the Five of Wands. So the Five of Wands is obviously a card of conflict. It can represent outright battles, as is represented by the card here, but it often has to do with conflict, competition, and the idea of having to step up to some kind of confrontation. Different tarot readers might have a different take on how negative or challenging the Five of Wands is. And of course, as you've noticed, I'm not reading the tarot cards in reversed. That would be too many, and also working with the upright is, I think, quite enough to work with the essence. But some tarot readers will read the Five of Wands as healthy competition and will read the reversed one as a bit of a toxic kind of confrontation. Sticking with the upright as a conflict, here we have a number of options with Lenormand. The first thing that could come up is the clouds. So the idea that things are all over the place, the dust is raised up into the air, and so it can sort of capture the idea of what's going on in the Five of Wands. But of course, the whip might be a better card. That's the Jack of Clubs. And that can represent a confrontation in a very direct way. So definitely the whip is a very good match for the Five of Wands. And another card that I think would represent the Five of Wands well is the bear. The bear is about competition, the idea that there is potentially an enemy that you need to stand up to, and that can also work well. However, in my dictionary, the bear tends to be neutral. It's the Ten of Clubs. And I feel that on its own, it is not really about competition. It can represent someone protective, like Mama Bear, for example. But if we had the whip and the bear, or for example, the clouds and the bear, then I think this could be a good match for the Five of Wands. And of course, there are other possibilities, but I think, you know, the bear with the challenging card or the whip with something else, depending on the context, would work well for the Five of Wands. I think the idea of conflict and, you know, that sense of intimidation that comes through the bear are appropriate for the Five of Wands. Moving on to the Six of Wands. This is a card of victory. I think most tarot readers agree on this interpretation. And so here, a number of Lenormand cards can work out well, but I really feel that it's the Sun that best matches the energy of the Six of Wands, because the Sun is a card of achievement, so the idea of reaching the top. And the Six of Wands is very much about that. It is not the last card of the wand suits, but it is a card of achievement. So I think this is best. Of course, there could be others. You might like the Rider and the Sun, for example, or the Rider and the Flowers, although this would suggest someone returning, but it's still really good for success. So a number of possibilities here apply with Lenormand, and as you know from the PIP video, we have lots of positive cards, so a number of them can apply. I feel, again, that the Sun is the one that works best to represent the Six of Wands. Moving on to the Seven of Wands. The Seven of Wands is an interesting card. It is a little bit about conflict, but not like in the Five of Wands. I really feel that this card has to do with standing one's ground, as does the Nine of Wands. There is this idea of protecting ourselves, really, you see there's like a border here through these 6 wands, and then there's another border here through these 8 wands behind the person, and each of them in each of these cards is holding on to a wand. So there is that strong sense of standing one's ground and putting some boundaries up to whatever could be coming towards us. So I feel that the Lenormand card that works best to represent either of these cards is in fact the Anchor. The Anchor card, I believe it's a spade. The Anchor card is a card of strength and solidity and being secure, and it is also very good for setting boundaries. It put things, it holds things firmly down, and it is also it does have a rigid side, so it works well with setting boundaries to people who do not have boundaries, or who don't behave within their boundaries. I think this is a really good card to represent either the Seven of Wands or the Nine of Wands. There is that sense of defensiveness, standing one's ground, and being confident and secure in one's position. And the Anchor is very much about that. So I feel this is the best suited card. And of course, let me know what thoughts you have or what other cards you might use. Moving on to the Eight of Wands. This is a really interesting card. It is very much associated with forward movement. I think most tarot readers will agree on that. It has to do with forward movement. You see the 8 wands flying forward, and it is very good for setting things into motion. So I think the Rider is really good with representing that, but I also feel that there is a need for speed, and so the Whip, in my dictionary at least, would be the card that would speed up the Rider. Yes, it does have a challenging aspect, but depending on the order of the cards, it can be positive, and on the context as well. So I feel that is a good suggestion. It can be the Rider on its own with a positive card, but definitely the idea of movement, unfettered movement, would be needed to represent the Eight of Wands. So not the Anchor. The Anchor is the opposite of movement. Not the Bear, not the Mountain, not the House. These are all solid cards that do not move. We really need a lot of movement, forward movement with the Eight of Wands. And with something like the Road, for example, the idea of moving forward, maybe the Stork, the idea of just keeping on going is really well highlighted by the Eight of Wands. So these are my thoughts. The Ten of Wands. This is a card of burdens. Very obviously, this person is carrying all 10, and you can feel that he's sort of struggling with it. It's heavy, and to me, it's really the cross. It's the Lenormand cross that really associates really well with the Ten of Wands. So the cross is about bearing one's cross, that sense of heaviness. It is also associated with choices in Lenormand, and sometimes sacrifice, but that is also a little bit coming through the Ten of Wands, especially the sacrifice and the burden aspect. Maybe not so much the choice, but it is very much the idea of having to carry something. There is that sense of burden. Very close association, I feel. Let me know if you think of anything else. I really think it's the only card in Lenormand that has that sense of having to carry a burden. I think it's really the cross that comes through. Let me know again if you have other suggestions. The Page of Wands. This is a very adventurous page. This is a card that's often associated with international travel, studying. learning, exploring. So really a student who is just, absorbing so much. So what works well here, I think, is the ship. I think the ship out of the Lenormand deck works really well to associate with the Page of Wands. This is a traveler card, even though the illustration is not so telling. The meaning that most tarot readers agree for the Page of Wands is someone adventurous, and I really feel that the ship is great to represent that. The Knight of Wands can be similar. So maybe the ship again works well. And notice here the knight is, the horse is in action. This is not like the Knight of Cups, where the horse is much slower, moves much more slowly. It is not galloping. Very different. Here, the horse is really charging forward. So this is a very fast card, the Knight of Wands. And there is definitely strong forward movement. So definitely the rider, possibly with a whip to represent this fast forward movement. And also possibly another movement card like the ship again, or possibly the stork. The idea of emphasizing forward movement and moving forward, so no hesitation, nothing blocking us, really forward movement. So I think another range of possibilities apply to the Knight of Wands. The Queen of Wands is a stable woman, someone who is wise, who has achieved a lot, really knows her status. There's a sense of achievement that comes through. And I would have associated possibly the Queen of Spades with her. I think that is a possibility, but I would want to add a greater sense of establishment, maybe an anchor, maybe a house that can work with it. That is a possibility. And of course we can add, for example, a son, someone who has achieved a lot. But I think that it might be good to use a Lenormand card that has a queen. And I think that the Queen of Spades might be a better one. I'm just going to sense check through the other queens. We have the Queen. Yeah, the Queen of Diamonds is not a good match for the Queen of Wands. The Queen of Diamonds in Lenormand tends to be someone who is not really stable, someone who wobbles and hesitates a little bit, not always clear about her direction. So the Queen of Diamonds in Lenormand is not ideal. Let's see, the Queen of Clubs is the snake. This is not a good match for the beautiful Queen of Wands. And possibly the stork, the Queen of Hearts is the stork in Lenormand. It's possible. I really think that the Queen of Spades is the best match for the Queen of Wands in the tarot, because the stork is a bit moving, I think the Queen of Wands is past the phase of having children. She's more established in her family and her status. And so I feel that the Queen of Spades is the best queen to represent the Queen of Wands in the tarot. That is my thoughts again. Let me know what you think. The King of Wands is a nice card. Again, just the male version of the Queen of Wands. Someone established, someone with status. I think in this case, the house might be a good match, even though it's a different suit. This is the hearts and the wands is more associated with the clubs. But again, the clubs in Lenormand is not the same as the clubs elsewhere. It is a quirk. Another king that might work well, yeah, possibly the King of Spades. This can work as well. And they would form a couple. It can work with a couple. Some people like to mix decks when they read. So hopefully this is helpful for people who mix the decks. It's quite interesting how they use the different decks in a single reading. So I think that the King of Spades, being the lily, the card of seniors, someone established with experience, would work well with the King of Wands. And the fact that the flowers blooms, it has to do with happiness and joy, can work well with the Queen of Wands. Although she is not necessarily as young as the flowers might represent, but often in Lenormand, the Queen of Spades, even though it is the card of flowers, and this has to do with youth and spring, the Queen of Spades is often someone who is young at heart if she is not young in age. So I think these two are the best match actually for the King and the Queen of Wands to the Lenormand deck. So these are my thoughts for the Wands, and these were my thoughts for the Cups. I hope this has been helpful to you to translate Tarot-To-Lenormand, or sometimes if you're working through different decks and you want to, you want to bring the energy together across the different decks. These are my suggestions for how to make sense of the Cups and Wands in terms of Lenormand. So leave me your thoughts. I'm really looking forward to your comments, and definitely let me know if you mix and match the decks. I'm really interested to know how you would do that, so I'd love a bit of a comment on that. And until we meet again, thank you so much for watching, and take very good care of yourself.